Ever since I was a wee lad, I had a few key interests. Gaming, of course, and asking really dumb questions. At long last, I'm finally at a place in my life where I can combine the two into ramblin' video essays. A dream come true. So today I wanted to invite you along as I struggle with something of great interest. Metaethics. Essentially, it's the part of philosophy that asks what might be the dumbest sounding but most critical question of all. You know how we all spend our lives talking about what's right and what's wrong? Metaethics swivels his chair around, pulls out some reading glasses, and asks, what are those? What is right and wrong? Is wrong a real thing out there in the universe, like a planet or interstellar gas? Is it something that we can discover? Or is it just a feeling in our gut? Maybe it's a useful rule our society made up so we wouldn't go around stealing each other's goats and shrink-wrap copies of Patchwork. And let's take a few steps back. When you say charity is good, are you stating a fact, like a square has 4 sides? Or are you just saying, hooray for charity, like you're cheering a sports team? Now, I'm not much of a thinker. I'm more of a let's play some games kind of guy. So today we're going to tackle these questions in the best way I can think of, by exploring the biggest meta-ethical frameworks through board games that can bring these to life. Okay, so where do we start on this big, kind of silly quest into our existence? Well, let's start with an easy one, the one that just clicks for most people, and possibly the one that people will instinctively lean towards. This is ethical naturalism, and it basically says that, yes, morality is absolutely a real thing, and it's not just real in an abstract sense, it's a genuine part of the natural world. There isn't a magical or mystical element in play, but instead it's a tangible aspect that can be empirically studied. Simply put, you don't need special access into a separate realm. Just studying the real world will give you the backbone of morality. So what game best displays this form of metaethics? Spirit Island. Playing as one of the many nature spirits, you are a direct agent of what is measurably good for the island. Every town you remove, every blight you prevent, every invader you drive back across the sea creates observable improvements in the island's health. You can count how much fear, how much blight, and make an empirically studied assessment on the good or wrongness of something in Spirit Island. Which is great because it gives you a precise empirical way to know exactly how badly you're losing. Now, you might already be thinking, it would be equally valid for the invaders to say that their conquest is actually good, that having more towns and cities increases whatever metric is valuable to them. These plastic invaders might even argue that the industrialization is innately good, while the spirits value the health of the island. And that's absolutely true. Metaethics as a study, though, isn't concerned about what counts as good, but rather what good is. So as long as you define goodness as an objective, tangible aspect of reality that can be measured, you're still within this framework, whether you're measuring the island's health or the industrial progress. Now, not all naturalists believe that goodness is as simple as counting resources on a board. It could be complex states like societal well-being. But Spirit Island creates a perfect laboratory where we can see the core principle in action. Goodness is a tangible feature of this world. When you make a move in Spirit Island, you can point to a real, tangible outcome. Like, this action is good because it creates fear in invaders, it prevents blight, and protects the Dahan. Is equivalent to an ethical naturalist saying this action is good because it increases human flourishing and reduces suffering. The key insight is that ethical naturalism answers the question, what is good, by saying it's something measurable in the natural world. Now, which things are actually good? That's a completely different question entirely, that can and has been argued for millennia. Maybe it's a subject for another day. So, does that all sound good? Okay, so that's all pretty slick, right? Empirical methods of finding goodness. Love it. Healthy island, happy flourishing people, great stuff. But is that all there is? What about concepts like justice or dignity? Is this something measurable? Can we just pull out our protractors and rulers and make a quantitative analysis? So this is where a new framework comes in, ethical non-naturalism. It agrees with the big question that yes, morality is a real objective thing, but the key difference is that moral properties are not natural properties. Instead, non-naturalists believe that the properties are a completely unique and irreducible kind, a different essence, a category entirely separate from physical properties. For example, a common approach to ethical non-naturalism would be based on intuition, wherein we have a moral sense that we can recognize between right and wrong. Think of it like the number 5. You can't actually touch 5. You can't actually weigh 5, but it is an aspect that can be applied to other things, and it's something we can recognize, just like right and wrong. The game of Go is the perfect game for this idea. Sure, you can count territory, but ask any experienced player about the right move, and it starts to become hazy. There's a whole vocabulary that describes concepts which defy easy measurement. Go players will talk about the shape of a group of stones, the influence it projects across the board, or the lingering presence of aji. Aji is really fascinating for me. It literally translates to taste, but is often thought of as a lingering flavor of the stones. It describes a latent potential or weakness in a position. It's a ghost of a threat that can be reignited later. And you can't really count aji, you can't really measure it. A good player simply feels it, like a lingering tension in the air. A Go master often just knows the right move by weighing these unquantifiable properties. They might play a move that looks strange to a beginner, but is a masterpiece of tsuji. It's the kind of move that can be intuited to be objectively right. This mirrors how intuitionists believe we can directly perceive moral truths. We just know that kindness is good and that cruelty is wrong. Not because we measured it, but because we can intuit it from its non-natural quality. Just like a Go player intuits the goodness of a move's shape, its influence, or its aji. Have you ever felt that in a game where you just know a move is right, even if you can't articulate why? I think it's actually a fairly common experience. Now, the fascinating thing about these games is that these intuitive judgments can prove correct when analyzed later, suggesting there is something really objectively being perceived, like the legendary ear reddening move in Go. Now, of course, intuitionism is just one approach to ethical non-naturalism. Probably the most accessible one, but you can find that moral essence in other places too, like how moral rationalists use pure reason instead of gut feelings. So yeah, it's a rabbit hole that goes as deep as you want it to. Okay, so we had one framework where goodness is a natural part of the world that we can measure, and another where we find it through other, less tangible means. But for most of human history, people have located the source of objective morality somewhere entirely different. What if the rules don't come from the world around us or from inside our own minds, but are handed down from above? This brings us to our third great realist theory, divine command theory. The premise is straightforward. Whatever is morally good is whatever a divine being commands, and what is morally wrong is whatever they forbid. Goodness is obedience to a divine will. This makes morality a rock-solid, objective fact. It's not something we discover or create. Instead, it's something we receive from an ultimate authority. In this view, good is a law prescribed from a perfect source. But this strength, its absolute top-down nature, leads to a famous 2,400-year-old philosophical puzzle called the Euthyphro dilemma. Is something good because God commands it, or does God command it because it is already good? It's a ton of fun to go down each horn of this dilemma and just feel deeply uncomfortable. Anyways, what kind of game has you and your friends poring over ancient text, trying to decipher and follow their commands? For me, the perfect example is the colossal 20-pound box of adventure, Gloomhaven. Instead of a human dungeon master, The world of Gloomhaven is already ruled by a set of inanimate, unquestionable holy text. Those scenario books and the city and road event decks. Their word is law. Now, the scenario book dictates reality. It tells you the objective of your quest, and that objective is good simply because the book has proclaimed it to be so. But the most powerful examples to me are those city and road event cards. Each time you visit town or take a road to your next mission, you draw a card that gives you a choice, and the card itself dictates the moral outcome. Take City Event 79. The sun is out and you are enjoying a pleasant stroll across the silent bridge, until you see two demons attacking a man ahead of you. You get closer and you can hear the demons berating the man as they swipe at him with their claws. "You dare spit on us as we walk past," one of them yells. "We will show you the consequences of defying authority." The card then gives you options. Help the man or walk away. If you help the man, you lose 1 prosperity. If you walk away and do nothing, you lose 1 reputation instead. Either way, you're getting morally judged by a piece of cardboard. And there's no right answer that leaves you unscathed. It's just an arbitrary judgment decided purely by a greater power than the player. And that's the Euthyphro dilemma reframed in cardboard. Did a game's designer create this difficult choice by simply writing penalties on the card? Or did they add those penalties because they were reflecting an already existing moral truth about the world? That getting involved in demon business is always a messy, costly affair. As a player, you can't really know the designer's ultimate reasoning. You can only follow the written law. Okay, so we got naturalists measuring goodness, non-naturalists finding essence to it all, and a divine command theorist who's receiving divine guidance from above. But here's another thought. What if they're all searching for something that doesn't exist? Enter the anti-realist theory, Emotivism. So what is it? It's the idea that there are no moral facts in the universe. None. Zero. When we say something like stealing is wrong, we're not actually stating a fact about morality and existence. We're just expressing our personal feelings on the matter. Emotivism is famously called the boo/hooray theory. So something like stealing is wrong is the philosophical equivalent of shouting boo to stealing. Saying charity is good is the same as saying and cheering for charity, saying something like hooray for charity. It's not about the moral truth as much as it is about expressing your attitudes and persuading others to adopt similar ones. Which, come to think of it, is pretty much the entire business model for YouTube. So, hooray for smashing that like button. And while emotivism might seem like a strange way to view all of morality, there is a game that perfectly captures this world built on a pure subjective feeling. The beautiful and dreamy game of Dixit. In Dixit, the storyteller gives a clue based on one of their cards. A clue that isn't a fact, but a feeling, a memory, a single thought. When the storyteller looks at the card with a chicken on a subway train with a suitcase and says the clue is Monday morning, they aren't defining what Monday morning is. They're having an emotional reaction to the art. They're essentially saying, boo to this feeling this card gives me. And your job as a player in this game isn't logically to deduce a truth, it's to empathize with their specific personal emotion. You can't argue that the storyteller is wrong about their feeling. It just is. It can't be true or false. And that's the absolute core of emotivism. Dixit creates this bubble universe where communication isn't about objective facts, but about sharing subjective emotions. This dynamic in Dixit mirrors the core question of emotivism. When you have a strong moral conviction, are you stating a universal truth, or are you just expressing an undeniable feeling that's welling up inside of you? But maybe it's not just your personal feeling. What if it's a feeling, or maybe even a rule, created by an entire group? This question leads us straight to cultural relativism. This theory agrees with the emotivist on a very key point. There are no universal, objective, moral truths that apply to everyone, everywhere, for all of time. But it doesn't just think morality is a free-for-all of individual feelings. Instead, it argues that there are moral truths and they are real, but they are created by and are only truly relative to a specific culture or society. Now, a quick asterisk, it is crucial to understand this goes beyond just noticing that cultures disagree about morality. It's to actually say that they do indeed have moral truths within that culture. In essence, the theory claims that for any given culture, what they believe to be right is what is right for them. The truth of morality itself is localized. For a cultural relativist, the statement, X is wrong, doesn't mean that boo to X. It means that my culture has established a rule that X is wrong. This idea of self-contained moral worlds, each with its own valid set of rules and values, is the driving force behind one of the most brilliant and notoriously brutal board games ever designed, the 1979 classic Dune. I always gotta bring it up when I can. In Dune, each player takes on the role of a faction, with intense and dramatic asymmetrical abilities and a culture to their gameplay. It's as if unique moral codes were baked into each faction's strategies. For House Harkonnen, the path to victory, their good, is paved with treachery cards and traitors. Using these tricks is both a strategy and a core virtue of their culture. On the other hand, for the Fremen, good is an ecological stewardship and a deeper spiritual connection to the planet of Arrakis itself. Their unique relationship to the sandworms are sacred, and this translates into their use of warm riders and the maneuverability offered. But with cultural relativism, you simply cannot judge a Harkonnen action by the Fremen standards. They are playing different moral games on the exact same board. The game doesn't say that one is right and the other is wrong, it just says they are different. At the highest degree, a good move for the Bene Gesserit, who can win by secretly predicting the winner, might look foolish or weak to everyone else at the table. But the Bene Gesserit definition of good is completely alien to the straightforward conquest from the Emperor or the other great houses. The game literally punishes you for applying the wrong moral framework. But this raises a difficult problem for the theory. If the Harkonnen morality is true for them, and the Fremen morality is true for them, on what grounds can we ever condemn a culture's practices? The theory actually seems to suggest that societal reformers who actually fight against their culture's norms are by definition always in the wrong, which is a conclusion that makes many people deeply uncomfortable. Anyways, for me, Dune is a masterclass in cultural relativism, because it forces you to inhabit a totally different moral worldview and operate within it. It fully encapsulates the sense of belonging to a different cultural standard, and acting within that standard to find success. Dune brings up the thought, how much of our own morality is shaped by the faction we just happen to be born into? Think about it. In Dune, the Harkonnen and Fremen argue as if there's one right answer. The Harkonnen says treachery is good, and the Fremen say no, stewardship is good. Their language is that of a moral realist trying to state a fact. But let's take a step back. What if that language itself, the very claim to objective truth, is the real illusion? What if they're both caught in one giant shared error? This unsettling idea has a name, error theory. It makes a powerful two-part claim, which goes as, Step 1, the claim to objectivity. When we make moral statements like stealing is wrong, we are genuinely trying to state objective facts about reality. We speak as if wrongness is a real property of the act of stealing, just like how roundness is a real property of a ball. We're not just expressing our emotions like an emotivist, or cultural norms like a cultural relativist. Step 2, the metaphysical claim. There are no objective moral facts anywhere in the universe for our statements to refer to. These properties of goodness or wrongness simply do not exist as a part of the fabric of reality. The combination of these two steps is the devastating punchline, because we are systematically trying to describe things that don't exist. Every single one of our moral claims is technically false. We are always in error. To see this idea in action, let's turn to the titan of social deduction, Blood on the Clock Tower. Now, normally Blood on the Clock Tower is a social deduction game where a townsfolk team tries to identify and execute a secret demon and their minions, much like a game of werewolf. But let's use a custom-built script with the experimental roles to demonstrate error theory. Picture this setup. The storyteller builds a game with only good players, and one special character, the atheist. In this game's reality, there is no demon, there are no minions, and the atheist is the only player who knows this fundamental truth. They also happen to know the one path to victory. For the townsfolk team to win, the town must vote to execute the storyteller. Let's say the game begins, and the players all talk amongst themselves normally during that first day. Then they all go to sleep. But once that second night concludes, because the storyteller can now kill players of their choosing in thanks to the atheist, they pick a player to act as the victim of a non-existent demon, and the townsfolk all wake up to a dead body. Now, watch as the 2 steps of error theory unfold. Step 1, the claim to objectivity. Based on the rules they assume govern their world, their conclusion is immediate and spoken as an objective fact. A demon is on the loose. From this moment, their language is that of moral realist. They make passionate, objectively sounding claims. We must find who is evil, or Alice is definitely evil. They genuinely believe that they're describing the reality of the game. Step 2, the metaphysical claim. But as the atheist knows, the objective evil they are referring to does not exist. There is no demon for their claims to be true about. Their entire investigation is aimed at a fiction. It's a case wherein the properties they are so confidently describing are not real features of their in-game world. The conclusion of the situation is a practice in error theory. Because the townsfolk are making objective claims about properties that don't exist in their universe, every statement they make about evil is false. They are trapped into a collective error, passionately debating the features and the form of an illusion. They might justify the death of another player as the busy work of the vigor mortis. By rationalizing their experience, they're creating an illusionary sense of objectivity. The atheist represents the error theorist, burdened with that truth that society isn't necessarily ready to hear. The entire game becomes a battle for the town's soul. Will they continue their misguided hunt for a non-existent evil? Or will the atheist persuade them to confront the true but bizarre nature of their world and execute their own rule-breaking creator? Either way, it's a lonely, thankless job that usually ends up with them being frantically yelled at as being a demon or a minion before getting executed. So, yep, playing as the atheist perfectly encapsulates the authentic philosopher experience. So, from objective facts we can measure, to intuitive truths we just know, from personal feelings and cultural rules to just plain old errors, where does this all leave us? For me, games can be little laboratories of thoughts and actions. Each of these games we talked about creates a tiny, self-contained moral universe. When you play Spirit Island, you get to experience what it's like to live in an objective, naturally sourced goodness. When you play Dune, you get to wear the morality of another culture. And when you play Gloomhaven, it lets you experience morality underneath a very boring god. So what's my point? I guess my point is, next time you sit down to play a game, listen to how you and your friends justify your moves. When you tell someone, you shouldn't attack me, or you should attack them, are you stating a fact? Are you expressing a feeling? Or are you just issuing a command? In a way, you're engaging with metaethics right there at the table. So yeah, this video was never really meant to drag you into the absolute deepest pits of every framework. And for the 3 philosophy majors in the comments already typing furiously about the Frigga Geach problem or solutions to the Ewerthrow dilemma, I see you, I respect you. But this is a board game channel and I am one single man. My goal was just to get our feet wet without drowning in the many underwater caves that lurk beneath the surface. And look, this stuff is complex. I've done my absolute best to get the details right, but I may have accidentally misconstrued or misunderstood some elements. To me, the most interesting part is seeing how these ideas crash into our games. So I recognize that these analogies aren't always a perfect one-to-one fit. So if you've got a game that you think is a way better fit for one of these isms, I genuinely want to hear about it in the comments. So what do you think? Which of these frameworks feels most true to you? And what other games make you ask these big questions? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you for watching, and bye.